if you're going through old recordings and you're trying to make them sound as good as possible, that's basically what I'm in the middle of right now. So I want to share with you what I'm doing. I have a great song with 4 mics recorded because back then all I had was an interface with 4 analog inputs. So what did I do? I mic'd kick, I mic'd snare, and I mic'd 2 overheads. That's it. Now, the toms are never going to be as clear as I want. When you have that kind of mic setup, you want to spot mic the toms ideally. You also, I mean, room sounds couldn't hurt, but this specific case, this room was a tiny practice studio that was just deader than dead. So room sounds probably wouldn't have been that helpful anyway. But for what I have here, I can make it sound much better, and I'm going to show you how to do that if you have a similar situation and you want to get as much as you can out of it. So check this out. First thing you want to do is pull up some program that allows you to use samples blended with your real, the sounds you got. So I use Trigger 2. Now, this has been around a long time, this plugin, and I use it on kick and snare. And basically, you can do this in multiple ways, but this is probably the easiest way to do it. So let me just show you that first. There's a more kind of professional way to do this that we can get into later on another video. But for this one, first step is add some sort of plugin like Trigger to your kick and to your snare. Now, the goal here is you could have a sound that was recorded at a pro studio, like when Chad Blake mixed the Black Keys, he's dealing with tracks he got from Jack White's studio. Now, that was a pro engineer recording that stuff, and it still needed samples. Andy Wallace, everything he got mixed came from pro producers, pro engineers. I mean, everything Andy Wallace mixed was coming to him great, and he still had to put samples on to make it great. So don't ever look at it like you can't use samples or it's a cop-out. It's not a cop-out. It just makes stuff sound better when you need it. It's not an always, it's not a must-have. It's just when it needs it, you do it. So in this case, 4 drum mics, none of which had any great outboard gear or anything on it. It needed it, okay? So what I had basically is the kick sound. I'm hitting the SSL 4KB, and I'm not doing anything with EQ. I have a little bit of a filter at 18 hertz doing practically nothing, okay? Then over here, we've got the gate, which is helping a little bit to just give us basically just a kick sound. Now, that feeds into Trigger. Now, in Trigger, and I could play this for you with and without Trigger, but the sound I've built here for the kick is built around the sample, so it doesn't really make any sense without it. But on the sample side, I have 75% blend, mostly sample, 25% the real sound. That's what I needed because there was a lot of cymbals built into this thing. So every time I turn up the kick, I'm turning up the cymbals. If I compress the kick, I'm compressing the cymbals. It made it not sound good, and that was mic placement. If the mic was closer inside the kick, more, covered so it didn't get cymbals coming in from the outside, would have been better. But it wasn't because I don't have a time machine to go back to 2008 when this was recorded. So here we go. Bottom line, lots of kick. If you notice, I'm leading the pack with the kick in because I wanted a lot of that clicky sound. Everything else is sort of, I lowered the room a little bit. I lowered the sub a little bit, but the rest is sort of sitting around 0 dB. Okay, so it's not like you shouldn't be memorizing these settings. I'm adjusting the sensitivity to just capture all the kick notes. When you see this thing going by, it should hit on every kick. So I'll play you the sound real quick. And if you ask me where I was, I'm gonna tell you I was there. And if I try to cover up, they're gonna call me. Now, just to give you a tip of what's happening, this track, okay, I have a little bit of low end boost, not a lot, but a little bit at 50 hertz, 400 hertz flat, and then I got 5K. I'm boosting, a little bit. But this track also is getting a little compression at the all buttons in setting, which is the most hyped up version of a sound you'll get. Certain compressors have those like hyper settings, like the nuke setting on a distressor or the all buttons in on an 1176, that kind of thing. So that gives me a sound. And then I'm also hitting this kick parallel, which just has kick going to it. See 23, bus 23. This is sending from here, bus 23, to this. And on this channel, I'm rolling off a ton of low end at 40 hertz. okay? And I'm bumping at 5K a ton because this is giving me a lot of the click. So if I need more click, I turn this up. I also have a Devil Lock on it. The Devil Lock is just giving me a little more personality on it. That's really all it's doing. So when you add these things up, this is what you get. And the more I turn this up, the more I'd be turning up the clicky part if I want more click. Okay, but this blend sounds okay to me.
And if you ask me where I was, gonna tell you I was there. And if I try to cover up, they're gonna call me out and stay. Well, it's alright, 'cause I don't care. I like
Just exaggerating it so you could hear even more of it. But that's the idea. Okay, so now that we've got this on snare, I've got a situation happening where I'm a ton of EQ into this trigger, okay? And if you notice, I had to lower this a lot because on the snare, similar situation where I needed a sample, but I'm using a 40% blend. That means mostly original sound, 60% original sound, 40% sampled sound. So because of that, because it's leading with the original, I had to EQ it significantly more than I had to EQ the kick. It's also just where the sound started. All right, so the mic placement was decent. The sound was pretty good. It was giving me a lot of, just a nice defined power. So, but then this sample gives me the length. The sample gives me the thing that gets heard through distortion. Like when you have a dense mix like this is with a lot of distorted guitars, drums playing, crashing cymbals and stuff, the drums will sound small unless you accentuate the length. You give the snare more length. And this is the same in any genre, so you should realize this. The denser the mix, the less dry the stuff really can be. So the more dense it is, you have to make it more wet in a sense and I don't mean with reverb, I really mean length. The part needs to be longer so it can be clearly heard. It needs to cut through all the noise. So that's the point, and that's why I have a lot of this stuff. So there's like a snare dry sound that's mixed in here, and this is, snare top, and everything kind of lives around zero if you notice. I love the bottom mic on a snare. Very, very fond of it, especially when I record my own stuff. So I'm boosting a little of that because it sounded a little better. Over here, chili snare. This is just like it gives me Zeppelin vibes in a way, where it's a super long sound, and when I make all these together, create the snare sound. So that's why the snare cuts through.
And if you ask me where I was, gonna tell you I was.
Take off the trigger real quick so you can hear what it sounds like without trigger. This is without trigger.
And if you ask me where I was, gonna tell you I was there. And if I try to cover up,
it's a whole different thing that doesn't work at all. I mean, it sounds small, it sounds amateur, it sounds garage band. And then when you add this, it doesn't. Something to keep in mind over here is look at what's going on, okay? I have the gate working for us, a little compression, and a hella EQ. I mean, literally 15 dB at 6.2K, 14 dB at 1.1K. So those are boosts, and wide as it goes, and the bell on the top. And then I'm taking out 6 dB roughly at 1K. Okay, so I'm doing just a lot to the EQ, 15 dB boost at 180 hertz. I'm doing a lot, and that's a bell on the bottom, and just to give me some sort of push. Because if you notice, that sound adds like that. This part, I'm creating what I would do with a top and bottom mic on a snare. The top mic's giving me a little bit of that push and that presence in like a throaty kind of way. It's like mid-rangey forward. And the other thing is giving me this length. It has highs on it. It's giving me the so this thing is giving me the do, and that's giving me the so that when you combine the two, they work. And that's why you could use like I said, it's only 40% blend like this.
I've got a dream but no girl, got a shell but no pearl.
Now to me that cuts, it gets through, and in the parts that are super distorted like this, All right, so let's just talk about that part real quick. There were no tom mics, keep in mind. So how did I get the tom sounds? I got the tom sounds because on my left overhead and my right overhead, this is how I did it. The first thing I did was duplicate the tracks, which created just exactly what you see up here down below. Then I would find on these tracks, so on the tracks above, I would find where is the fills? Like, where are they? Are they, and what are they doing? And then I basically pull up trigger on these other tracks, and then I create rack tom, which is the 10-inch tom. So you see tom, close mic, 10-inch, like that's what these all are. 100%, like no blend at all. 100% mix of just the sample sound, because it's already going to be mixed with the overhead sound that has the original sound in it. So we don't need to do a mix, because that would just be bringing up the cymbals, right? So it's got to be 100%. I did the same thing with the floor. All right, on the floor, 14-inch floor, because I knew what the drum sizes were. So that's the thing. You could ask questions. If it's not you who recorded it, find out what the sizes were, or just guess and check till you find the thing that works the best when you compare it to the original sound. All right. Now, what I'm basically doing is thinking like a drummer. Okay. By thinking like a drummer, it allows me to hear a fill like any of these fills, like this one, for example. So I literally go in and I just copy the exact hits down onto this track. So in other words, when the rack tom is hit, I put that on the rack track. So what I usually do for this to make it easy is I count it. So in other words, if I hear the drummer go clack, clack on the snare, I'm not counting that because the snare's already taken care of on the other tracks. I listen for the toms, and then if he goes doo doo, all right, and then it goes doo 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 doo. So it went from high to low. That means to me it's the rack to the floor, because as the drum gets bigger, the sound gets deeper. So you have to hear the pitches of what's happening, and then you determine, okay, that's 2 rack hits, you know, doo doo. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or something like. I just count it as it's playing, and then I put that here. Oh, that's this. Put that here, and that's this. So I put that here, and then I wind up with a clear, pristine tom sound that gets blended with the track, and it brings everything to life. This is how you take recordings that were done in a subpar way and make them better. All right. So like that's how this fill is created. And you could guess and check with this. Like, even if you're not a drummer, maybe you're not good at this, just guess. You think it's a rack tom, so put it on the rack track, and then be like, okay, that sounds cool, but let's hear how it sounds on the floor tom. Okay, that sounds better. And then like you could solo the snare track or something to figure out what was really played. In other words, the biggest tip is you go up to your snare and then you turn off trigger and just solo the snare and listen on that track to what was played, and that will also kind of it will show you what's a snare and then what else is happening if you can't hear it clear enough by listening to the overheads, because you should be able to just listen to the overhead track and pick it out. But if you can't, doing that with the snare will absolutely help you. So that's what I did. It's like if I couldn't really pick it out firmly using the overheads, I just used the snare track. So this is how I built all of these. It makes the song come alive. If I were to mute these, the whole thing is just gone. So let me mute these out and listen to the fill without it, okay? It's like, where is it? Where did it go? You know, where did it go? It's not there. What did I do to the overheads before I did that is a question. So what I did was boosted top end to bring out the brightness of the cymbals, because it wasn't recorded with EQ or anything really happening on these overheads that would make them sound shiny and nice. So I'm boosting top end a lot The Bellon 16K, like an airband style boost, 15 dB. All right. I'm nothing here. I'm rolling off 7 dB at 1.5K because there was some harshness there, and I'm boosting around 144 hertz a bit. All right, that's on this channel. No compression. I can't stress enough, if you got cymbals playing constantly and you start compressing them, you just get a shh the whole time. It just sounds like constant cymbal. No definition at all. So avoid compression at all costs. All right, and even on my parallels, I want you to see that the parallels for these drums, because I talked about before, those kicks and the snares get sent to here, 4 parallels. Kick and snare is going to parallels with a limiter. This has the Puig Child, and then an L2 on it just to catch the stray peaks. I got a V comp with a little bit of L2 on it, and I got the 33 tape just on. So this is just kick and snare, mind you. Kick and snare only. And then we got this, the bus comp. All right, now on these overheads, what's happening on the buses? I've got the Sheps 73 doing a lot, boosting some high end on this channel. On this one, you know, I mean, it's not really critical what the settings are, just a little bit happening here. API EQ, it's just EQs. That's what I want everyone to realize. This is the Abbey Road passive EQ. So by having just EQs, and this is the API 550A, which I have a tendency to use a lot now too. So all I'm doing for these channels with the overheads and the toms is EQing. There's not compression happening on these buses, because if there were, the cymbals would just be whooshing the entire time, just sloshy whooshes. All right, so that's what we got going on over here. Now on the tracks themselves, the 2 overheads just have the SSL 4KB with EQ on it, and they're close. See, they're close to the same. They don't have to be exactly the same. A lot of people think they have to be exactly the same if you're trying to get left and right and have it sound balanced. They don't. Even if it's slightly different, it still makes it sound good. If in some cases it makes it sound better, because it'll be a little wider because your left ear is hearing things a little different than your right ear. It's actually helps. So I have that going on the left and right. No compression, no gating on both, obviously. Then I got, oh, also don't forget this. I'm saturating as much as it will give me, basically 70 dB of saturation happening on the SSL 4KB. That gives it kind of tames the harshness in a musical way, is the best way to put it. Some people do this with lo-fi, I've seen it, but that was a little too much for me. It was darkening it too much. It didn't need that much, so I just did it with this, which is a more subtle way to do it right on this plugin. But you could also do it with a de-esser. If you notice, this is what I have pulled up just in case, because I tried the Pro de-esser, the Fab filter, didn't work as well. I tried Kramer tape saturation, didn't work as well. I tried the Waves de-esser, didn't work as well. I tried lo-fi, didn't work as well. I tried all those things before I settled on just doing this. Now, on the rack, some EQ happening on the rack, of course, and I also have the trigger on. That's it, because this didn't need a whole lot. And if I'm not mistaken, this is almost exactly the same EQ as, it's close as these. Yeah, it's close. So that's just some EQ happening on that tom right now. Down here on this floor tom, I have EQ happening and whatnot. Same kind of situation, but there's more stuff happening after it. Now, a lot of this stuff, I just wanted to point out on the floor tom that's before this trigger, it's not doing anything because trigger is 100%. All it's doing is taming the level a bit so that the trigger itself gets a cleaner signal of the tom. So in other words, if you de-ess the cymbals out of the way of the tom, now it hears the tom a little more clearly, so it can, if it's like a more detailed part, it could pick it up more easily because it won't have all this cymbal in it. That's really all that's happening here. Some saturation and then compression to bring up the level. That's really all I did. But also, once I had trigger on working well and this was already here, like I could probably take this off. It wouldn't make a ton of difference. I would just have to fine tune trigger again. And why do that if it was working perfect, picking up on everything the way I needed it? I just left it all on. So don't think that this is all critical here. It's not. It's only, if you've got a ton of cymbal in the mic, you may want to de-ess stuff to get some of that out. So now the tom is what's in there instead of the cymbal. That's basically, you know, you could use a de-esser on cymbals. This is a good tip too. So just check out the end of the song here real quick. this is the kind of thing that took me a long time to figure out exactly how to add what I need to bring the sounds out when I'm starting with subpar stuff. So we all don't have the benefit of having everything we could possibly need that would benefit the track when we're recording it. But after the fact, we have all sorts of tools today. So I hope you liked it. Anything else that you guys do or have ideas about that you use to improve stuff, let me know. Love to throw it in the comments. We can create a section where people can go and get even more information. If you have questions, throw it in there. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. I appreciate it. This is Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy.